Hey everybody, this is Jordan Brown with Fun and Affordable MTG. Today I'm going to bring you a Tiny Leaders deck tech. This may be something we start to do regularly, but today for this first one, we're going to actually look at a silver bordered Tiny Leaders deck in honor of Unstable's release in just under 2 weeks. For anyone who is not familiar with Tiny Leaders, it is a format very similar to Commander, inspired by Commander, in fact, where you have a deck of 50 cards, one of which is your Commander, General, whatever you choose to call it. And then the other 49 cards are your lands, creatures, instants and sorceries, etc. And every card in the deck has to be converted mana cost 3 or less. We're going to start by looking at our commander, Phoebe, Head of S.N.E.A.K. Phoebe, Head of S.N.E.A.K can't be blocked by creatures with flavor text, and you can pay 2 blue and black. Phoebe permanently steals target creature's text box. To me, this seems like a very solid soft removal, and I think that it makes her a good commander damage target. So we're going to kind of build the deck around that, having her steal our opponent's stuff or our creatures to get the needed keywords to kind of sneak in and deal that 13 points of commander damage. So these are creatures in our deck that we want to target with Phoebe or that we can use to get in for damage. So Blurry Beeble enters. Um, it has the blurry effect, so that means it's conditional unblockable, which seems good to me, and it gives looting ability, which on Phoebe will be good because we're going to want to be swinging in with her regularly. Sly Spy, when it gets in for damage, it makes players discard, which I think is going to be very good. We're going to be able to get rid of some removal potentially or some other damaging cards. Inhumaniac's a good target because it potentially adds some bonus damage on Phoebe every turn. Not always, just sometimes. An extremely slow zombie it's a good baseline blocker, I feel like, for 2 mana. And if we happen to steal an opponent's first strike or double strike creature, giving it last strike will give Phoebe split strike or triple strike, getting him for some bonus damage. So, some other good creatures that we want to target that we have in the deck are Baleful Strix, which has Flying and Death Touch, and in addition, when it enters, we get to draw a card. Dimir Infiltrator is another good unblockable target for Phoebe, or if we already have her decked out, we can transmute to get Baleful Strix or X, who we will look at in just a moment. Wharf Infiltrator gives her Skulk and another looting ability. Invisible Stalker provides hexproof and unblockable, making her immune to removal, and the same is true for Zathrid's Skyblade. So now we've got some utility creatures that'll help us work around opponents' removal and creatures and get to the cards we need. So first up, we have X, who I mentioned a moment ago. He is a black and a blue for a 2/2 creature, and as long as X is in X's owner's opponent's hand, X's owner may cast X and activate X abilities. Target opponent can't cast X and plays with that opponent can't cast X and plays with his or her hand revealed. So I think this is a good card because it's going to let us see what our opponent has coming up. I'm not that worried about paying 5 mana to cast their cards. In Tiny Leaders, that's a little bit overpriced considering all the cards are 3 CMC or less, but that might still prove useful on some occasions. Primarily, we want to see their hand, what they've got coming at us. So next we have a couple of looters. Merfolk Looter, just a solid looting card. We get a card and then we discard a card so we can get to the pieces we need, whether it's lands or counter spells or creatures that we want to give abilities to Phoebe for. Seeker of Insight serves as a nice blocker that can loot if we've already cast a non-creature spell this turn, which is not going to happen all the time, but some of the time, which is fine. So Shielded Ether Thief is also another good blocker. We can flash it in at the end of the turn if we're holding up for a counter spell or something. And whenever he blocks, he gains energy, which can allow us to draw a card if he blocks enough. So we also have Consulate Skygate, Fogbank, Jeering Homunculus, Kaijin of the Vanishing Touch, and Sigiled Starfish are all other good wall blockers. We want these things to soak damage so that we aren't taking damage while Phoebe gets in for her commander damage pings. Sigil Starfish lets us scry, which is excellent. Kaijin of the Vanishing Touch lets us block a creature and then return it to the owner's hand. And Jeering Homunculus lets us go to creature, which is sometimes good, sometimes bad. But if Phoebe doesn't have all of the evasion that she needs to get in for damage, this will let us force someone to attack with something that might be able to block her, such as if she only has flying and we need to get past the flying creature. So now we're going to look at our gas cards, and we have some instants and sorceries that let us draw cards and sometimes discard cards so we can find the pieces we need while we're playing. So we got Brainstorm, which is great. Draw 3 and then put 2 cards back on top of your library. Careful Study lets us draw 2 and discard 2. And Anticipate lets us look at the top 3 cards of our library. One of them goes into the hand and the rest go on the bottom of our library in any order. So Cloak of Feathers is a nice 1 mana blue spell. Any creature gains flying until end of turn, which is great. We give that to Phoebe, and it draws us a card. Cantrips are very good, I feel like, in Tiny Leaders, especially in Voltron or general focused damage decks. So we also have Chart of Course is our last piece of main gas. It lets us draw 2 cards, and if we've attacked with a creature, which is what we intend to do almost every turn with Phoebe, we don't have to discard a card for 2 mana. I think that is very good here. So we also have some bonus gas and control. Magic Word lets us tap down one of our opponent's creatures, probably their commander or another big threat. Cartouche of Knowledge lets us buff Phoebe, give her flying, and then also draw a card for 2 mana. And Crowstorm is, so even if you're casting it after only 1 other card on your turn, you're getting 2 1/2 flyers that can serve as chump blockers or full blockers if your opponent's only swinging with 1/1s. Or on the off chance that you have been able to cast more, or your opponent has tried to interact with your cards this turn and you've countered them or whatever, it gets you even more. So I think it's very good here. It's not a main point in the deck. If you really feel like you ought to take it out for another counter spell or some more gas, that's fine. And now we're going to look at our counter spells. We have a lot of softer counter spells in this deck. We got 5 of them in total. I did not include everybody's favorite hard counter, the actual counter spell for blue. I think it's fine in this. It can be a little bit pricier, usually only like $2 or so in monetary value. So I think it would be a fine addition to the deck, probably for taking out Condescend or Countervailing Winds. So Condescend is in here because you can pay X so that it counters the spell, to whatever they have to pay. So it'll be out of their range, and also it lets us scry too. Search them for more answers. I think Censor is very good because it's a nice little early game one. In the first couple turns, everyone's going to be using all of their mana. Very few opponents are going to be holding up mana, worried about a counterspell until turn 3 or 4, and even then, more likely 4 or on. In addition, you can cycle it, which is another nice thing I like about Countervailing Winds, which is more of an endgame counterspell because it relies on having cards in our graveyard. But also, you can cycle it early game if you need some answers and your opponent's not doing too much that you're worried about countering. So I also have Mana Leak, which is soft hard. They can still stop the ability by paying the cost, but usually that's not going to happen all the time early on. And of course, Negate is going to stop any of their hard removal. All of these cards, we primarily want to worry about their removal because Phoebe can usually gain hexproof or something to avoid being a target. Now we're going to look at our land base, of which we have 5 non-basic lands. Secret Base lets us get a colorless mana, or if we're casting a creature with an Agents of Sneak watermark, we can spend 1 mana of any color, such as our commander. Evolving Wilds, of course, lets us go and grab whatever basic land we want from our deck. Watermark is very good here because if in my opinion, because if Phoebe gets removed, this will help pay for that commander tax. And of course, Dismal Backwater gains a life, and otherwise it's very similar to Dimir Guildgate, which just give us make sure we're not getting color screwed. So then we've got 8 islands and 5 swamps to balance everything out, and that's it for our lands. So if you look at the deck here, I've made it on MTG Goldfish as well. It's just under $20 to get it on with TCG Direct, or just over $16 to get it just through verified sellers in more packages. So very, very, affordable. I think it's a very fun deck. Hope you try it out. Thanks for watching.